What is up, everybody, and welcome again to the Bearded Browns podcast. We have Chad. We have Angel's permanently frozen for the entire show today. Chad can't even see him. Angel will not be here today. If we could send out a couple prayers for his families, that'd be greatly appreciated. He's going through some tough times right now. So definitely send some prayers Angel's way. Greatly appreciated. But me and Chad are here today to talk about some camp stuff. We got some press conferences that have happened. And hello, Paul Moyer. Thank you for joining the show, buddy. How was your weekend, Chad?
Pretty good. A little taxing. We had a Christmas in July party cookout on Saturday, and we drank basically all of the leftover Christmas beer, and then whatever else we could drink after that. So I made a nice honeyed ham though. So we got to eat some little ham sammies and a bunch of good food, and all hang out in the backyard and enjoy half Christmas.
Good deal. I love Christmas ale, by the way.
Yeah, we had a bunch of different ones left over every year. Like we traveled to Cleveland, so I brought a bunch of different ones back from Cleveland, all different sorts of Christmas beers, and then we try to grab some along the West Coast. There's not nearly the variety out here. It's not super big out here, but it's kind of fun for everybody to try them. It's not a type of beer that people out here are super familiar with. So some of my San Diego friends get a little taste of that Cleveland Christmas tradition. It's fun.
I was going to say, it's because you guys don't have snow.
I think that is part of it. I think we don't have the weather, Christmas weather, so people are just like,
I had my son's graduation party this weekend. That was a blast.
Nice.
Officially done. They're all grown up. That means they're see ya.
It's over.
No, not really. I'm definitely not. That's never ending. That goes without saying. I'm pretty sure, but so let's get into Brown stuff. I want to start off with Deshaun Watson's press conference that ruffled everybody's feathers. Did you see that?
I did. It didn't really ruffle my feathers that much, but I did see some of that feedback where people were not super hyped with the responses, but I don't know. It didn't ruffle my feathers that much, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal.
Me either. I'm going to play it real quick, and then we can talk about it.
Okay.
You guys ready for that? Let's do it.
High level.
Deshaun, setting aside the rehab component that you went through this offseason and ramping your arm back up, just what did you, I guess, alter or change, or how is your approach coming into this season different maybe than the previous 2 years?
I think honestly it's really just blocking out all the bullshit. Honestly, outside, it was tough coming in 2 years, different environment, different different team, different all that. So you come in and your character's been mentioned this way, and then it kind of flip on you, and you trying to biggest thing you trying to get people to like you or improve. But now it's like at the end of the day, it's 2 years in, and if you don't like me or you have your own opinions, then forget it. It is what it is. So I think blocking out all the noise and focusing on me and focusing on what I need to do to be the best Deshaun Watson I can be for myself, my family, and my teammates.
I wasn't upset about that at all.
I mean, well, I get it. I guess I get it. I would say people are like, this kid is like at a spot where like anything he says is going to be taken by some people as like, and other people are just so up in arms that they're going to find something all over the place. I was thinking specifically, I heard an interview with Daryl Ryder this week following the press conference saying like, he didn't think like the comments were like appropriate, or he didn't like the, I don't know, almost like the vibe of them, or the the feeling of him. But I don't know. Like I said, when I hear that, I'm just, what mindset is different coming into this year, or getting ready for this year, saying like I'm just gonna drown out the BS and I'm gonna like ignore the external noise and just focus on, doing the job. I don't really see. I feel like that's what he has to do at this point, because the noise isn't stopping. Um, for those who are like, well, he said that, and that brings up more like scrutiny. Okay, but he's trying to make it clear that he doesn't care then. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
So first and foremost, I'm going to go through these two comments that we got. Everybody ignore Streamlabs comments. That doesn't matter. Paul says he's sticking up for himself. I'm good with that. He knows there's expectations and he knows what he's got to do. I agree. James Frank, I like that. Honestly, I'm glad that he said that. Basically, don't give a F about the outside world. Thinks and screams he's focused to win games. Let's go for. You know what my biggest deal with this is, and it's not against Deshaun Watson, is all these people talk crap about him. The press, the fans, everybody. And he sinks that in. He sunk that in because he listened to the press and the fans for the last 2 years. That's something that sat on his shoulders, and there's something that he couldn't help. Honestly, the suspension he probably could have helped, but the injury was needed. He stepped out. What I don't like about the press is everybody, and this is what I think it is, everybody talks crap about him, and then they'll write about him, and they'll put it out, and then as soon as they're face-to-face with him, hey, Deshaun, like, no, you don't talk to me like that, man. That's why he's giving people, like, short answers and just not...
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and I think part of Daryl's point was he's like, we've been pretty fair to him, and I'm like, that's fine, but like the whole entire social media and media universe has not. And so when he says like this is stuff that like the media is thrown out there, and I want people to like me, like who doesn't want to be well liked, and that's been hard. But then his only option, because it's not going away, and believe him or not, he's taking the stand that like this stuff didn't happen. It's been either lied, misconstrued, or it's been like misinterpreted. And if that is his stance, then whether you believe him or not, he is hearing this stuff anyway. And it's probably been pretty bothersome and pretty stressful for him to like be the villain in this situation. Like no 20-something-year-old guy who's always been kind of a star and well-loved wants to be the villain. But yeah, I think it's fine for him to say, like, whether you like the way he phrased it or not, if he's going to succeed, he's going to have to do that, because he's not going to succeed if he's taking in all the negativity that's out there. It's just not going to happen. Whether or not he can actually kind of block out all the BS and just focus on playing, that's another story. Whether he actually can do it, it's easy to say. It's hard to avoid all social media and everybody texting you like, listen to what they're saying about you on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But if he can't shut it off, that's his best chance to succeed, I think.
We've seen it happen with Baker Mayfield. Obviously, you had the Baker bros and then the people that hated him. Paul said, this tells me that he's focused and he's ready to shut the critics up.
Yeah,
We'll
and
see.
I hope he is. Like I said, it's easier said than done, but...
It is a lot easier said than done.
Yep.
I don't want to sit on this too long. I did like seeing some of the clips of him at Greenbrier, in pads, fully dressed, all the players. It's good to see that football's like so close to just being here, dude.
Yeah, he looks okay throwing the ball. Like I said, I thought we talked about it earlier on our early shows. He looked pretty good throwing the ball in OTAs and mini camps. He just was taking more days off and stuff. But when he actually throwed, he looks pretty good, and they started throwing a little bit more longer balls towards the end. When I see him out there now throwing, the ball looks good coming out of his hand. His motion looks good. But it's to be seen how well he can take hits, and maybe more importantly, how he can avoid them. But yeah, he's out there throwing, and it's good to see that like he's on track with his rehab, and he can actually continue ramping up, so that when the regular season's here, his arm is in regular season shape.
Right.
That still has to happen. He can't. The season starts today. I'd be nervous. He can't carry the load, but now he's got a full like 5 to 6 weeks to build up and get his arm ready for the season.
Yeah. Brent Miner on TikTok says the best Browns podcast ever. I am thoroughly looking forward to seeing him play. It's they showed a Cincinnati hit where he got hit. Did you see that where he was scrambling? He got hit in Cincinnati, and it was right on that
He
shoulder.
did the spin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody speculated like, here's maybe where the problem started, and I'm like, I mean, I guess it looks like a hard hit when they like slow it down like that, but I mean, and I don't think he was trying to be like super tough guy. I think he was off balance. The guy hit him. His only way to absorb the hit was to like spin, take 2 steps, and fall forward. I think he should avoid those, by the way. It would be great if you slid right there and took the penalty when they inevitably hit you anyway, like
I was thinking the same.
other quarterbacks to do.
What do you think, Angel? Oh, never mind. No.
Angel's just
we had that episode last week as well.
yeah. Yeah, but I did see that, and they're like, he can't take hits like that, and he can't. But I don't think that's where the injury started. I mean, he fractured a bone in his shoulder blade and tore his labrum. Like, it didn't gradually happen. He probably strained it a little. That was probably the earlier injury in the season, and then he took some big hit somewhere where it fractured.
That was an Indianapolis game, I believe, where that was it. That was done.
I think that's the one he came in and couldn't throw.
Every ball was hitting the ground.
That's
like
where
5
it
yards
became
prior.
pretty. That's where it became pretty apparent. Like, oh, something's like really wrong here.
So yesterday, everybody was in shock as well because he ended at Greenbrier 2 possessions in, and he was done. Mary Kay reported there was nothing to be worried about. 2 reps, and he was done. That was
People were worried.
Yeah, and he's back today full force. So
yeah, and it did make me nervous. The reason I wrote 2 reps down is because yesterday all the reports I saw and what got kind of regurgitated was like he left practice early before the other quarterbacks. The clarification that came out today was the other quarterbacks each took 2 more reps, 2 more throws. So he threw, all the other quarterbacks threw, then he started to like take his pads off and wrap up practice, and Jameis and Tyler Huntley did 2 more throws to the net. So that's not I kind of thought like he jogged in early. It just, they told, he had a tough throw on the last throw, and they probably just told him to wrap it up.
I did hear that the field was really, really wet, the turf. They had
Today
to squeegee
again.
everything. Yeah, today again as well. They had to squeegee the whole field before they could even go out there. So I would imagine it had something to do with it. You don't want your quarterbacks out there trying to run around and do something stupid.
Maybe the ball slipped on the last throw, and they're like, you know what? Let's
stop this before it gets any worse.
Yeah,
You don't
but
know.
we'll see. Apparently, the report was today, though, he was back at practice, able to throw on drills. He went 5 for 5 on his reps on 11 on 11 or 7 on 7s, and so I would have been a little nervous about that. Like his arm was having trouble with the reps if he couldn't have come out today and play, but apparently he came out today and he was fine. So it probably was just a one missed weird throw at the end of practice that they decided to be cautious with.
James says, Weatherman Njoku said it was wet. Colton says, what's your thoughts if they should play Deshaun Watson in preseason or not? I don't want to see Deshaun Watson in preseason at all.
Honestly, here's my problem with preseason, and I get the mixed responses. It would be a better league to start the season if all the teams just did what they used to do and did like one quarter, a full half, and maybe into the third quarter, and then like 1 or 2 series and out. That's how they used to do it with almost every team, first, second, third, and fourth preseason. A quarter, a half-ish, depending on, some even came out after halftime to like see what it felt like to go from cold to playing again. And then they'd maybe play a series or 2 in the fourth game. Football would probably be better if that was the case, but every team has basically collectively decided, like, I don't want to put my guys at risk. The guys are expensive. Like, too much is riding on these individual players with their huge contracts. But the problem I really have with him playing in preseason now is I don't believe they're going to have Amari and Elijah and Njoku and all them out there playing with him. I don't think they'll have all the starting linemen who are coming off these injuries out there playing with him. So, you're getting just as good of reps and chemistry with your players in practice because of that. So unless you could tell me like they're throwing out the whole starting offense for him to play a little, I'd probably be okay with it, but I don't think that's happening.
I'm going to read one more comment and we're going to move on. Pete Barker said, invested in the O-line, keep him better protected now. It's where Burrow went sour, too many hits. And I could probably agree with that. Burrow got hit a lot, and they are known for a horrible offensive line. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I've gotten into it a little bit with some Bengals fans this week, talking about just quarterback rankings that have come out, or all that stuff has come out about the top 10 quarterback contracts now that, like, I think Deshaun is the 10th highest paid quarterback in the league, which, by the way, is crazy how fast that switched. But I got into a conversation or two with the Bengals, nothing crazy that heated, but one thing that I think is kind of crazy about this situation, and one of the things that Deshaun's probably referring to when he's like, I got to block out the BS, is they keep coming out with these quarterback lists, like quarterback rankings for the season, and they put Deshaun at like 24. And it was like, when he played last year, I know he was injured, but when he played last year, he certainly wasn't the 24th best quarterback. He was better than that, right? I think most of us would think. And then you'll hear the comments of like, well, it's because he was injured. And it's like, well, that's weird because they put Joe Burrow at 4 and he missed most of the season also with that wrist injury and with his calf injury. So I feel like there's this double standard of like, well, Deshaun gets bagged on because he hasn't been healthy last year to play, so they move him down the list. And then other players who aren't healthy, they kind of like use it as like, oh, well, he wasn't healthy, so that's why he gets a pass, kind of. So I just think like Pete's right. Like Burrow's been beat up. Deshaun has to protect himself. But I do think there is a little bit of a double standard to like whether a guy's injury is an excuse for him not performing well last year. We saw the same thing with Baker, or whether it's like, oh, it's more like a real like issue for the person.
Reality kicking in hard. All right. We're going to move on. I'm going to play the video. I'm just going to go right into the video, and then we're going to talk about it. I know you didn't want to play this video, but it's going down.
No, it's totally fine. I'll just tell you, I can't hear it for some reason. So, but I know it pretty well. So I'll try my best to see if I can hear it this time. I couldn't hear it listening to it on Twitter.
I got you. Here we go.
Tony, you can tell everybody I'm going to call the plays this year, so I want to get that out of the way. I know everybody's interested. And any decision I make for our football team, I take a lot of information in. I try to listen to a lot of people and make decisions. And ultimately, what I feel really, really confident in is our offensive staff. I feel really strongly about Coach Dorsey and the entire offensive staff. So we'll continue to be an operation that works together. It's never been a one-man show, so I just want to make sure that was, I know Tony was going to answer, so I want to get it out there before that.
That reaction from the people in the back. Oh, wow. That was, were we all really amazed? Did we think that Dorsey was really going to be playing or calling the plays?
Some people did. Yeah. I think we had all talked about it once before that, like, do we think that's really going to happen? And it's like, maybe, but also maybe not. Like, I don't, but there were some people that were hell bent on, well, here's part of the problem. I think some people, just want it to happen so bad. They want Kevin not to call plays so bad that they're just like doing what a lot of fans do. They get their mindset on something and then they convince themselves of it. Like every little hint of it, they like, oh, it backs up what I want to happen. Like I'm fully invested. And then when it doesn't go their way, it's like baffling to them. I think this goes all the way back to something we had talked about in the past where they basically came out Deshaun was on his podcast, or he might have been on a different podcast, but I think his own. and he said, "Oh, Kevin was letting like Dorsey run the offense in OTAs, and a bunch of stories came out that like, oh, this is foreshadowing that Stefanski's going to be giving up the plays play calling this year. When in reality, it's not uncommon for the head coach in OTAs or minicamp, or even sometimes training camp, to let the offensive coordinator run the offense. That's not weird. I'm positive he did that with Alex Van Pelt, but I know a lot of coaches that call their own plays. They let their OCs kind of call practice plays because they're going around coaching.
Yeah,
So
they're going to be there. They're going to be making
yeah,
like strong, very, very strong play calls with him. It's not just
but
Stefanski on the sidelines calling every single play. It's not going to be that. It's going to be Dorsey in his ear, like, hey, dude, I think we should do this. We should do that, maybe.
he said he's like it's collaborative. We've always done it collaboratively. He said even back with Alex Van Pelt, he helps create the game plan for that week, and like they collaborate both leading up to the game and during the game on what plays they should be calling. And I know AVP set those scheduled plays at the beginning of the first and third quarter coming out of the half. The scripted plays AVP put together. After that, once it becomes kind of freelance, Kevin calls. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens, but
Not
I don't
only
know.
that,
Are
man,
you? I mean, is this bothersome to you at all that coach is calling the plays again?
listen, he's 2-time coach of the year. Okay, that first and foremost is a big win. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, because I guess thumbs up are offending people nowadays. Anyways, secondly, the guy played with a half a team last year, and we still did what we did. I am not against it at all.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. I look at it this way. I think Dorsey was hired because he has success as a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator working with mobile quarterbacks in a different type of scheme than Kevin has typically run. So he brought him in the same reason he brought in Vrabel. We need new ideas. We need the most smart guys in the building we can get. And I don't think it was ever because he thought I can't call the plays. He called them successfully now for 1, 2, 5 last year, like 7 or 8 different quarterbacks he's been able to call plays for. He's done it for Baker. He did it for Jacoby. He's done it for all of the guys that played with us last year. And I think realistically, like somebody on, I posted something on Twitter because it was really like a shocking thought to me. Somebody posted, why bother bringing in a great offensive coordinator if you're not going to let him call plays? Like was the post. And my response was basically twofold. One, I don't know that Dorsey has a history of being like a great offensive coordinator, quote unquote. He had a good year with Josh Allen, and then the next year he got fired. So I don't think that means he's bad. I just think like as a play caller, like it's not like this is a world-renowned play caller. He did it, and he had problems. I think he's even less balanced than people want Stefanski to be with his pass to run ratio. He was pass happy and put a ton on Josh Allen's shoulders, and I don't think that's what they want in Cleveland. I think they want to balance the run and the pass better. But looking aside from the fact that like you should have never come into this thinking like Dorsey was a legendary play caller who like absolutely was hired for that skill. The idea that they said, well, then what's the point of hiring him, just tells me how little some fans know about what an offensive coordinator's job was. So I posted, somebody has to coach the quarterback. In our scheme, the offensive coordinator like doubles as a quarterback coach for both strategy and mechanics. Somebody has to help them watch defensive film on the teams they're going to be playing this season. Somebody has to help them come up with an offense that a base offense that implements the best of all the different skill positions they have, their linemen and their quarterback. And that doesn't just mean coaching those players and looking at what they can do. It means collaborating with all of the other assistant coaches, the tight ends coach. What can they do in that room? the line coach, like what do they do well? What kind of plays will work for us? And then there's also things like in-game consultations about what plays they should be running. What are you seeing the defense doing while I'm calling these plays? Halftime adjustments, like all of this stuff falls on the offensive coordinator. So to think like if he doesn't call plays, he's not doing his job, that's ridiculous. Like there's so much more to it, to me, than like just he calls plays and that on Sunday and that's his job. Such a small, like 3-hour portion of a 60-hour a week job.
I mean, going back to Kevin Dorsey, honestly, the guy, I think, did a really well job in Buffalo as well. Did I say Kevin Dorsey?
You mush the two together.
Ken Dorsey. Hey, they're going to be mushed together all year, so might as well just start calling him Kevin Dorsey. Anyways, my apologies. Won't let it happen again until next time. Ken Dorsey was not bad at all in Buffalo. He didn't throw the interceptions. Josh Allen did. And like you pointed out earlier, they were a pass-heavy offense because they're relying. That cup has a mustache on it.
No, just the straw.
Sorry. Anyways.
It makes me want to talk like this.
You look like the Monopoly guy, like in 2024. But yeah, it wasn't Dorsey that threw the interceptions. I do like Josh Allen to an extent. I think it's great that he's mobile and can get out of the pocket and make stuff happen. But at the same time, when you're under that much pressure and you're trying to throw the ball, what's going to happen 9 times out of 10? And that's why I like to have a quarterback that is able to get out of the pocket and still make something happen, but slide. Don't take tackles. Yeah. Still try to make a play happen as best as you possibly can. Josh Allen, when under pressure, throws the ball, and he'll bomb the thing down the field while running against him. Yeah. It's not good.
And he's got ability. He makes mistakes. He has the ability to do it, but it is what leads to a league-high interceptions. But he also has a league-high touchdown. So, like, they're okay with that, like, gunslinger offense there. But I do think after Dorsey left, and he might have been a bit of a scapegoat. They might have Josh had a rough start to last season and really kind of came around. And I don't think it was because the play calling changed. But they did get more balanced and started using their running backs a lot more. So it's not like but it's also not an indictment on Dorsey that he's not calling plays. It's just Kevin doesn't see a need to give it up. He's very good at it. He can do it a bunch of different ways. And the reality is, if he was going to give it up, it's much less likely he's going to do it to start a season with a new OC. But, maybe if Dorsey stays next year and they become even closer, they start to vibe on like how they like to call plays, maybe it happens next year. Again, that doesn't mean you come into next year counting on it, because it's going to be up to Kevin when he's ready to give it up.
Not only that, you got to think of this aspect. It's going to bring a whole new offensive scheme in. We're not going to be playing what we've been playing the last 4 years. It is all going to be different. And that's what
Dorsey, I think, is for. I think Dorsey was brought in because they watched how good that offense worked with Flacco, and Kevin said, man, we need to make an offense that good for Deshaun. Deshaun is better than Joe Flacco. We need to make an offense that shows that, and we clearly did not do it. So I need somebody in here who's done that with a Deshaun-type quarterback, and that's what they're going to do.
Not only that, Dorsey's an ex-Cleveland Brown quarterback, and Andrew Berry loves bringing people home.
That's true.
Bringing them home. Right. Want to move on?
Yep.
Amari Cooper's press conference. I'm sure you guys seen that. What's funny is the Cleveland Browns podcast team had more technical difficulties than we ever have at Greenbrier. I've got audio with left, audio with right, and it's freezing. So I'm going to play Amari Cooper's a piece of his press conference, and take it as you will. We'll see what happens.
I mean, well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really talk to my agent about the contract. Like, I think people they really have a kind of a misconception about what's really going on. I don't hit him up every day, like, asking. I don't really do that. Now we're getting closer to the first game. I'm willing and I'm ready to go out there and, just play great football, and, just be undeniable out there.
So it seems like you've kind of found a home here in a way, as you've been describing a little bit. You look and seem very happy here. Ideally, in a perfect world,
Yeah, I would. I'm really the type of guy like I don't really like change. I mean, if change happens, which a lot of times it inevitably does, you have to be able to. Yeah, I want to be here.
Amari, contract situations can sometimes get contentious in a very public way. How appreciative were you that this particular situation, that didn't happen, whereas, down in Dallas, that seems to be a regular thing?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's just the nature of the business, the nature of the beast. I mean, if that was to happen, one of the things that AB was telling me and telling my agent, he was just saying, like, not to take it personal. And I wasn't taking it personal because I understand that it's business at the end of the day. So I would have to attribute it to that. If things got contentious in that way, I would hope that the organization didn't take it personal because it's never personal.
Do you really think Amari Cooper doesn't talk to his agent that much?
I mean, it's hard to believe he doesn't. Like, it's hard to believe they're not getting updates. But I do know from like an agent perspective, it's just like hiring a lawyer, like for covering your case. Like you kind of like hire them, and like if they're like, I'm gonna try to like put together a defense for you, you don't call them every day and you're like, how's the defense coming? What do you got so far? Like you do check-ins probably when there's some information to exchange, but I wouldn't be shocked if like the players don't talk to their agents daily about like the different negotiations that are going on because they're so pieced together. This Mari's agent, I don't know, could have 100 other clients that he's like also calling and doing different deals with. Just like, I don't call my realtor like, hey, tell me about each house that you found that like might be good for us to look at to this week. Like they tell me when they're like, okay, I found 3. I think they're reasonable. Like, let me know what you think about this. Is this the right direction of where you want to go? He's probably downplaying it a little bit, but I do think it is really the agents doing all that. Like the guys don't even know like what all the background talk is. They probably just trust them in most cases.
It is mostly between Andrew Berry and his agent.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the fact that he said he wants to stay here. He's not a real big fan of change. And when they asked him, this happens a lot in Dallas, and he was like, "Oh, shots fired," because Dallas is, let's get rid of this guy and we'll bring this guy in. They do that a lot, and so do we to an extent.
I heard he was pretty salty about that at the time. That's kind of the rumors that were floating around lately about like how he exited Dallas. The other thing is like, I'm with you. Like, it's nice when anybody says like, I would like to stay here. I didn't put a lot of stock into that. I saw a lot of people that are like, oh, we're re-signing him because he said he wants to stay. I'm like, well, that's fine. Is he going to want to stay when we offer him? Jarvis said he wanted to stay too. As soon as he found out, we didn't have a very high offer for him and New Orleans did, he bounced. It's just like, you got to do what's best for your wallet sometimes too. What that usually tells me is if it comes down to like a reasonable offer that matches what the market is for him, he'd probably be happy to stay. The other side of it is, are they going to want him to stay? And, I watched that Andrew Berry press conference. I think if anybody hasn't seen it, take a look at it. But he basically says like, we got that deal done with Amari to get him into camp, and he deserves it. And he's right. He deserves the money. I expect him to have another good year this year, though. It's a bit unpredictable
For the future.
following. But yeah, I don't think there's any real risk of 30-year-old receivers. I think it's around the time that receivers are either 31 or 32 that cliff fall happens. So when it comes to re-signing him, that's a little bit of a different story. We'll see how that plays out depending on how this season looks.
Paul said, I know how the Browns feel about players 30 and older, especially receivers. I don't think he repeats his numbers like he did last season. Maybe the Browns offer an extension, maybe 2 years. He's important to the offense. Pete Barker says, more Cooper, Jeudy. Wow. That's weaponry for Watson. And James
and
Frank
that's
said,
part of it,
"Don't
by the
forget
way.
Njoku."
Pete, again, nails it, because for Amari to repeat what he did last year when Elijah and Njoku and Jeudy all are going to be, potentially taking some targets. Maybe he doesn't just by pure volume, but the reality is, like, I agree with Andrew Berry when he says, nothing that we did precludes us from re-signing him. What I did think, though, was while you were renegotiating his contract, that was the perfect time to re-sign him if you were certain you wanted to keep him. And I have to believe if he was 26, that would have been a good time for them to say, let's extend you. The fact that he's 30, coming off of his absolute best season, which at 29, like, people were saying, like, how could he possibly decline if he had his best season at 29? That has nothing to do with what you look like when you're 30. I was 29 and then I was 30 and everything hurts more. Like, it's just, that's a giant threshold number. Like, when people turn 29, 30, 31, like, your body just changes. And I guess the best way I can put this is he's at his absolute highest season at his 29th year. Now he's 30. Why would you sign him right now when his market value is the highest? Do you guys really think he's going to put up like 1,500 yards this year and become even more valuable?
The thing is it's statistically proven that after 30, the stats decrease.
31.
31. Let's give it a.
I mean, there's a lot of people do fade at 32, but good receivers, top receivers, usually have a pretty good year at 30 also. But after that is the problem, and he's already 30 now. So, like, I guess my point is, like, there's some hesitation, and for good reason, because what if he has a bad year this year? What if he gets hurt? He can't lose a lot of time. He's older. If you're 24, sure, you can also get hurt, but you expect when they come back at 25, they're going to be still in prime condition. If you get hurt when you're 30, coming back at 31 might not be as pretty. So, like, and realistically, chances are he won't repeat what he did last year, given all of the different factors, which means he'll be an easier sign next year than he would be if they did it right now. So I'm totally fine with it. And if they decide to bring him back, great. They probably believe he can continue it.
I agree.
To a lot of players that, like, people were calling for the same thing for Jarvis. I still see people on Twitter like, bring back Jarvis. Jarvis wanted to stay. They offered Jarvis very little money. He was 29 years old going on 30. He had like a 1,100 yard season, a 900 yard season, then like an 1,100 yard season. And then the next 2 years were 500 yards and 274 yards. They were smart not to bring him back. It doesn't mean they'll be right like that every time. But
Right.
at the time, people felt the same way. He's too important to the culture. He's too important to the locker room. You have to bring him back. What they did instead was traded for a 28-year-old Amari Cooper, who, instead of having 500 and 200 yards, had 1,100 and 1,250. So I'm just going to let them build the team the way they think they should.
All right. I agree. James said, I think Coop would be one of those wonders that age like a fine wine, and we'll see. Only time will tell.
Could be. Almost nobody does, but like Larry Fitzgerald did. But I look at people even like last year. So I saw some study that showed, like, in the last 10 years, not last year, but like from 2012 to 2022, there was like one 1,000-yard receiver over the age of 31. What was crazy was last year there was like 4, but you're looking at guys like Keenan Allen. I'm trying to remember who else had it. Diggs, maybe. I'm missing some easy ones, but they had like 4 guys that were older. Adam Thielen, who had really good seasons last year. So it's like, if you look at a 10-year sample with like one guy crazy, then you look at a 1-year sample that has these big outliers. I don't know. If you start seeing that again, maybe you feel a little more faith that these guys can play a little bit longer. But when you look at guys like incredible guys like AJ Green, Jerry Jeudy, or not Jerry Jeudy, I'm sorry, Julio Jones. When you look at AJ Green, Julio Jones, some of these guys that were like absolutely physical, dominating like receivers, and then you see what they look like at age 32, and they're like walking out of the league it does give you a reason like to understand why they give a little bit of pause. But maybe he does. Maybe he comes out and looks just as good this year physically, and they say, you know what, I think he can maintain this for 1 or 2 more years. Let's do it. Okay. We'll
See.
cross that bridge next offseason.
Right. So I got 1 year left with the fine wine of Amari Cooper.
And he got a great deal. He's going to get the same amount of money as last year, but it's guaranteed, so he's protected if he were to get injured in camp, which made him more comfortable to come back. And then he can earn 5 years, $5 million in incentives if he plays like he did last year. And guess what? If he does, he'll be worth it, and the $5 million will have been well spent. That's why it's nice to have incentive-laden deals.
I agree. So we're going to move on. While it is good to see people at Greenbrier in pads playing football, while it's good to see your quarterback that just went over a surgery, a big surgery, shoulder surgery, throwing the ball again like he used to with no-look passes to Njoku in the end zone, that mustache. I can't even take you seriously.
I shaved the beard, so I have to have
Yes.
the mustache draw.
His beard will be back for anybody that is
It'll be back.
wondering.
I'm going through all the phases.
Yes.
Beginning of the season, I'm going to have nothing, and then we're just going to see how close to the Michael beard I can have by the time the season ends.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see how far it can make it.
It's a test. But there's a lot going on at camp. But injuries still happen. There's pre-existing injuries as well, which are a bummer. We got people on PUP lists. We don't have it on here, but I do want to say, like, it's good to see Chubb cutting and running full speed now. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's on here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was the last thing. Anyways, we're going to move along here.
Well, I guess spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I guess spoiler alert. We jumped to the last thing first.
Oh, man.
Some of us reviewed this document before we started.
This like crazy, and I messed up. But yeah, you want to start this injury escapade off?
Yeah, it's easy. None of these are very long. So as far as the tackles, which we've talked about over and over, go, the only one currently practicing out of the big three is DeJuan Jones. He is practicing at right tackle, which is a bit of a surprise to me. As you guys know, I would have loved to use this excuse of having Wills out as a chance for him to work on the left side as well. I did hear from some of the reporters that they haven't counted that out yet, and I believe even it might have been Stefanski in one of his interviews said, you know, we only went through 1 or 2 practices. We started him Jones on the right side because that's what he knows, and Hudson has played the left before, but if guys continue to be out, he'll play the left sometime because one way or another, all of our tackles, we would like to be able to compete at both sides. So that's good. But James Hudson is taking the snaps on the left. I just have been so unimpressed with him. Even as a very young player, he still has room to grow, but he just hasn't been impressive. So like going into the season with him on the left just sounds terrible to me. And so it puts a lot on Wills returning early and being ready. But Jones is practicing on a positive note for Wills. He's on the PUP list, but he has been working on the side the way Jones was back in OTAs. So now they're DeJuan Jones practicing, James Hudson practicing. He didn't have any injury. Wills is on the sidelines, and still nothing from Jack Conklin yet, as he's also on the physically unable to perform list. In other bad lineman news, Brian Allen also got hurt while we're on the lineman, and they put him on IR. I had thought that meant he was out for the season. I thought two can be designated to return on the 53. I just don't know if this is where it's going to happen, but I guess that means you don't necessarily have to count him out completely. But he is on IR, so for those of us that have been talking about like Luke Whippler's development and who would come in as the backup tackle, now it's looking pretty clear that it would be Whippler, and I would Brian Allen, even if he comes back by the time the season starts and gets put back on the active roster. Without all of training camp, it would be a long shot to think he would slide in as the number 2 right away.
And I know Brian Allen, people are like, oh, who's this guy? But he won a Super Bowl.
He was a free agent. He can play. He's not familiar to us because he just got here. But they brought him in knowing they had Whippler, which means they wanted some competition for that backup center
Luke Whippler,
spot.
excuse me, is from Michigan, correct?
No, Luke Whippler's an Ohio State guy, I think.
Ooh.
You're thinking of Zinter, maybe?
Zinter's from Michigan.
Yeah.
Whippler is from Ohio State. Wow, I'm an idiot. I'm 0 for 2 today.
Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University, yes.
Yeah.
Zach Zinter is from Michigan. He could play right guard and center. Good job, James.
Yeah, I think he played
Thanks
some
for
center.
screwing me up there.
Yeah, he would probably be the emergency center, I guess, if that's a thing. Like you want as many guys as can snap possible on your roster, but you hope you don't need to get to those guys.
Speaking
In
of
other
snaps,
injury news,
sorry.
Yeah, in other injury news, the bigger of the stories are that Dalvin Tomlinson had to have a knee scope. This could mean a lot of things. Essentially, it's an arthroscopic surgery. Usually it means you have some loose cartilage or some like free floating debris in your knee that needs like sucked out basically or cut and smoothed. And the timetable for that can be anywhere from like 4 to 6 weeks most of the time. On the big fellas, I always err towards the side of caution. Luckily, we're very deep at defensive tackle, and a scope usually indicates like no structural damage. Even if it were like a meniscus scope, it means they're just going to cut a little piece away. So most likely, Dalvin Tomlinson will be back in September, if not sooner. But again, I err towards the long end of protocols for recovery timetables for the big fellas because they got the weight on those joints. So 4 to 6 week-ish injury would be my best educated guess without knowing the details of the surgery, which means hopefully he's ready for week 1. He's been such a long-time veteran with like 10 years in the league-ish that he could probably step right in and go. The question will be, is he able to work out and keep himself in shape in the next 4 weeks to be ready?
TBD.
I don't know, have you heard anything on him other than that, or just they don't
Nothing.
release details usually when a guy's injured until either he's back and they're like, okay, now that he's back, we can kind of tell you what happens, or we just never find out in minor procedures. The other one is Greg Newsome's hamstring injury. He had a surgery too. I know Dalvin had his at the end of last week, right as they were coming in. I couldn't find anywhere that said when Greg Newsome had his, but apparently it's happened already. And the main injury to a hamstring that requires surgery, most commonly, and I'll be digging around for details or some reporter who releases more details, but the main injury typically is like an avulsion fracture, which means where the muscle attaches to the bone, which is your tendon, pulls on the bone and cracks the bone. It happens almost because people's muscles have become so powerful that they can take off and explode them, and sometimes it just pulls at the insertion site too hard and it cracks it. Most of the time, much like we talked about with anchoring the ligaments, they'll just anchor and put like a small bone screw at that point to reinforce the bone so it can heal correctly and doesn't pull away at all or break any of the scarring and bonding, and that helps it to recover. The only other thing I could think of that would lead to a surgery is if he had some long-running tendonitis that wasn't healing and they wanted to clean it up, but I hadn't heard anything prior to July of him hurting it, so I don't think that was the case. It only would make sense that it was an avulsion fracture.
We know that they like to
pulling
keep some of those
at the
things
bone.
under covers as well until they
They
fully
do.
know.
They do. And I don't think he would have completely tore it because they were saying they're hoping to have him back for the start of camp. I'm not. I think the timetable for healing for this would be somewhere around like 6 weeks. And that would mean like he would have to be ready exactly on the day that they start playing. And are you going to not practice this guy for
6 weeks.
the next 5 or 6 weeks and then say, game 1, run out there and cover CD Lamb, like, and don't get hurt though. Don't pull your hamstring that just recovered. Like, he's going to need some ramp up time. But I would expect, I'm hoping that he comes back by like the 3rd week of September. It puts some pressure on Emerson to be awesome, and Denzel.
Well, see what happens. That's another thing that's just we're not looking forward to it. Obviously, it's just another thing on the list of things. Hopefully we don't have the same injury protocol we had last year.
And by the way, I saw a ton of stuff on Instagram and Twitter like, oh, here we go, Browns injuries are piling up. This happens to every camp every year and every team. A couple guys go down with injury. Like, it's totally common. We're fortunate so far we haven't had any like year-ending injuries, but I think everybody's just a little paranoid because of how bad the injuries were last year. But again, some of these are unavoidable. Most of last year's injuries were contact injuries. And then finally, Nyheim Hines and Chubb have been drilling together. They're both coming off ACL tears, and of course, Chubb's got all the extra ligament damage recovering. But they're both working out apparently together. They were both doing sprints and able to run, and they've both been at the practices, which apparently has been really good for the team. Everybody's excited to see Nick out there with them. And they are even doing some light drilling in like individual drills, even though they're not fully released for activity. And that included, as Mike mentioned earlier, some like planned cutting. So they are like changing direction, which, as we talked about, it goes, jumping, running, jumping, changing directions, planned, changing directions, unplanned, and then taking contact. So he is kind of coming along the rehab process, like bit by bit by bit, and it's pretty encouraging. We know he's lifting a lot of weight. I did get the first like reports this week though, like do not expect him at the beginning of training camp. Some of the press conferences, and one of them I think included Andrew Berry, said, we are not looking to put this pressure on this guy to be back for week 1. We want him to be back strong. We want him to be himself. We're happy with where he's at the rehab. He's exactly where he needs to be, but we're not expecting him to start the season. So
it is good to see it though. It is. It's kind of a stress reliever.
He's doing more and more.
Right.
Progressively.
It is a stress reliever for some of us because when Nick Chubb went down, obviously it was an emotional moment for Cleveland. Angel's still smiling about it, but it was an emotional moment, and to see the guy's recovery and watch it, and I guess they're making a documentary about it.
Yeah, that's where these videos started getting leaked, is because the documentary crew is posting some stuff on Instagram, or normally, like everything else, like we haven't seen anything from
camp,
any of the other injured guys returning, like Hines or Conklin, because the Chubb stuff's just coming out because they're filming a recovery documentary.
And at camp, I guess when Chubb was running, there was no video allowed.
Right. And there's still not video allowed on everything, according to Mary Kay. And Daryl Ryder. There's still stuff they're not allowed to record. Certain drill stuff, trick plays, some of the special team stuff.
You guys will see this jersey on the field this year.
Yep. I would say it is encouraging constantly to see him coming across. Things could still go wrong. Things could also go very right. But it was good to hear some realistic, like, everybody who's talking about him being back for week 1, like, take a step back. Like, that's a long, long, long shot. We're just happy he's progressing towards getting back sooner than later. That is the whole injury front. It's a lot, but again, everybody looks like they're coming back to start the season, and we are deep enough to handle a game or two without.
I want to hit up one more comment before we leave, or before we move on. Pete Barker said guarding caps, Denzel, concussion protocols. I'll leave that there.
Yeah, he's had 3.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't like the guardian caps. And I get it. He said his reasoning, like, I like to be as light as I can. It makes it feel weird to like turn your head. So yeah, but Pete's right. It's if anybody should be wearing one, it's somebody that already had 3 concussions that cost them multiple games. But a lot of the players I think are going to wear them. I get why a smaller player who needs to be as quick and shifty doesn't want to, but if that's the case, you better be ready the first time you go down with a head injury to have the fans right up your butt with criticism for you not wearing it. So,
and then James said it's going to still be an emotional moment when Chubb runs out on the field. Yes, that goes without saying. That's
someone will cry.
Well, I'm going to cry, dude.
There you go.
Yep, I'm that guy.
Yeah, someone will cry. Yeah, one of the most devastating injuries I've seen in all my time, like as even a PT, like seeing him go down at the Browns backers bar, complete silence. Everyone was just like, I mean, it was so disheartening. And it was I even get like injuries are part of the game. I understand the injuries, but to see a guy like that everybody loves so much go down, I don't think I've seen a silence like that at the bar since Myles Garrett mashed Mason Rudolph in the head with a helmet. The only other time I've seen everybody stunned.
Why is it always a Pittsburgh game?
It's
I mean,
somebody.
Did you even hear the stadium and all though when it happened? Everybody's like, "Oh!" when they were playing a replay on the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure they played it once and then they were like, ugh.
"Yeah, we gotta cut that, stop that."
Yep. All right, our last topic. Boo.
Jimmy and Dee press conferences. Everybody loves Jimmy and Dee. What are you talking about, Chad? Yeah, there you go. Much better. I got a little piece of their conference here, and it's mainly talking about the stadium.
That was what came out of the conference mostly, right?
Yes, that was it. Jimmy and Dee Haslams both talked about stadium stuff, and I'm just going to play it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Here we go.
Could you update us on the stadium situation?
Yeah, great question. I think we said the last time we talked to you all, this is a big project, okay? No matter which direction we go into, it's complicated. Anytime you have a public-private partnership, it's not easy. We're continuing to work through the process, and we hope sooner rather than later we'll have a solution. But I can assure you, we were on the phone for an hour this morning talking about various things that have to be solved, and one solution or the other, and we'll continue to do so till we get to what we think the right answer. And if you ask what's the right answer is what is best for our fans, okay? That is driving 90% of the decision making. What's best for our fans? Because these are long-term decisions. This isn't a 5-year decision, a 10-year decision. It's at least a 20-year decision, maybe more. So what is best for our fans will ultimately drive what we do.
Yeah, we just came off the MLS All-Star Week down in Columbus at the lower.com stadium, and we can see what a new facility again can do for the vibrancy of the city. I mean, it was an incredible 3 or 4 days in Columbus.
Since you last spoke on it, is it getting more complicated or less complicated?
I don't think either, Tony. It's just, I think I said this, if we go to Brook Park, and I'm not saying we are, that's a $2.4 billion project plus the real estate development around it, which make about 3.5. That would be the 3rd or 4th largest construction project ever done in Ohio. If we remodel our existing stadium and spend $1 billion, that's more than Sherwin-Williams is spending on their downtown office building. So the complexity of these, getting the design right, the cost right, making sure you can finance it, how much equity it's going to take, working with city, county, and state just takes time. And everybody is working hard on it.
How close are you to coming up with a plan? Some of the feedback the folks that I've talked to, they're looking for a singular plan. They're not looking for option 1 and option 2. So what's the timeline to make that decision between a renovation or to
Yeah, good question, Daryl. I don't know that because there's too many variables. I can tell you we're intensely focused. Hope it happens sooner rather than later. If I was you to ask what's sooner, I don't really want to commit and say exactly because there's still a fair amount of variables.
That was the most confusing, backwards ass thing I've ever heard. I didn't know how to take it. You know what? It's like you put the Cleveland Browns fans, as you wanted to bring up your MLS soccer field, at the lower end of the damn totem pole. No. Yeah, a new stadium brings fans and happiness. That's great. Cleveland Browns are so much, well, I'm not going to say so much better because actually the Columbus Crew has a championship or 7.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, not that long ago.
right. I was at that.
our-
I was at a game not that at the new stadium. I delivered a bunch of stuff to the new stadium, but no, it's just confusing, and it gives you like this false sense of somewhat of a hope that we had.
I don't know if they're just going a little into like, look, we've kind of done this before and it's been successful. I'm not sure if they're kind of just tooting their horn like, trust us, we're okay. What I took out of it is like when you're cutting around the fat on some of the stuff they say when it comes to the stadium about like it'll be collaborative, like we're gonna do what's best for the team and the city. We need to work with the mayor, like any of that stuff. When they really get down to it, like Dee throws out like in a little poll that we took, it seems like the fans prefer dome. It wasn't that scientific though, but like just in our survey, and it's like, but we like both options. We have to work with the mayor. They want the dome. I think they want the dome, and I think we've all talked about it. We prefer the dome, and we're okay with it being Brook Park. I loved the idea of tearing down Burke Lakefront Airport and putting it there. I'd still love for it to be on the lake.
I'm okay with
the
that.
difference is between like an open stadium on the lake and the dome anywhere around Cleveland, I'll take the dome anywhere around Cleveland and then just work on the logistics later. But it did seem like they were saying like, hey, we've been through this, trust us. Like, and then a little throw in of like, it seems like fans like the dome, almost like preparing fans that don't want the dome of like, hey, a lot of people do like it though. And then to double down on it, Andrew Berry's press conference the next day, they straight up asked him, we talked to the Haslams and they talked about the dome versus the outdoor stadium. What would you prefer? And he straight up said, oh, give me the dome for sure in Brook Park. And all I could think was like, he would have never said that if he didn't know that's what the ownership preferred too. You'd never like throw it out there unless you knew like that's what they want anyway.
That was kind of letting the cat out the bag. I agree to an extent, but man, like,
and
why?
And I'm sure it's not a done deal. I'm sure they can't just say we're doing the dome because like they can't do it until like it works and they know it's going to work. But it was just funny to hear him so straight up say like, these aren't gladiators. They're athletes, and we want to see them at their best athletic potential, and a dome helps that. And in those late games on these playoff runs that we are set to make, we want them inside where they can perform their best. So,
I mean, the downfall of it all is the Cleveland contract ends. You have to have a decision made.
I don't think so. My only thing is, I think they want to. And it would be better for everybody if by the end of this year they could do that, because I was told if they don't start by 2026 or by off-season 2025, like they don't have a chance of getting it done in time. I think at that time you make a deal with the stadium of like, you'll have had the decision made by that time, and you like say we want a 1-year renewal on the lease or something. But
you could do that
because that lease ends in 2028, you really want a stadium ready or renovated for 2029. And if it's going to be a new stadium, I think it takes like 3 full years to build.
Yeah, 3-4 shovels would have to hit the ground next year. We've talked about it numerous times on the show. If you wanted to have a new stadium built the way you wanted it, I guess I want to say almost the biggest thing for the Haslams is what they're going to build around it, because they don't get all the revenue that's in Cleveland right now for parking.
And the story came out that like they really only need the 2 point whatever billion dollars, not that that's little, to build the stadium. The extra $1 billion that makes up that $3+ billion that they need for the whole project, that extra $1 billion is private investment, because if they're going to put a Hilton there, they're going to invest in that land. If they're going to build like a complex for sports or shopping, whatever, restaurants, they'll get private investment for those. But yeah, they're going to need to split like a $2.4 billion ticket for that stadium. And it's not cheap. And I don't know where they're going to get the money, but I don't think they'll do the deal until they do. And the goal is over like 10 years is usually the timetable they put on it to earn that revenue back in economic growth in order to make those deals.
So since you moved to California, I'm going to say we're just going to put the syntax on California, okay? How about that?
Yeah, we have a couple of those.
We're going to do that.
We have an incredible gas tax. That's why you hear like, oh, gas in California is like $4.50, and it's the gas tax is huge here.
California. I didn't even mean to press that.
Awesome. Yep. I don't know anything else out of that. I mean, it just seems clear they're shooting for the dome. It sounds like they're trying to like get people on board with it, or at least accepting that that's what they want, so they can actually feel comfortable pulling the trigger. We've talked about it. I think it'll be fine for the city. They can do something else with that lakefront. There's been so much push to develop it anyway, and they'll work out the details with travel later. The only other thing I got out of that press conference is he mentioned Paul DePodesta, who I remember being a hugely polarizing figure in the Browns organization. And I feel like since things have been going smoothly, ever since hiring Stefanski for the most part and Barry, he's sort of faded into the background to what was like in 2018 or whenever they hired him. Like, I can't believe we have a baseball guy or a numbers guy as a consultant and all this stuff. And then sort of as things have gotten more, even with the down years, like stable, I think people just kind of forgot about him, that he is part of designing like the organization. But they mentioned that a deal's not done. His contract ends after this season, just like Barry and Stefanski's were, but they're working on an extension if possible.
So the Oakland Athletics made a movie about it, being the number guy, baseball guy, and I think all of Cleveland kind of accepted that after watching that movie. They're like, all right, well, you know what? This guy can crunch numbers like that. We'll just accept it. But no, that's not what it is.
He's an organizational guy. He's like there to help design, like, how do we want our culture? How do we want to spend our money? It's not about like numbers, like what's somebody's batting average. That's not the kind of numbers he's specializing in. But
I don't know who else we'd put in that position and what would be the outcome of that.
I'm not sure they would fill it. I feel like they kind of made it as a special role for him. I know other teams have similar roles, but I don't know if it would be more of a like, he's gone, we hired this person, or it'd be like, well, that position dissolves. All I remember is the first year he was there, he wanted McDermott, and they didn't hire him, he wanted to like hire McDermott, bring him in, and he really liked Stefanski, and they went with Freddie Kitchens. Ew. That lasted 1 year, and it was an absolute disaster. McDermott looked great in Buffalo, and then we eventually bring in Stefanski anyway. He looks much better here, and like I've had faith in him since. Like he wanted to go that direction with guys like Barry and Stefanski, McDermott, guys who have proven like those were probably the right call, and instead we didn't listen to his advice and went another direction, what like Dorsey wanted to do. And it just solidified to me like he obviously knows something that can contribute to the organization. And now that we have guys like Andrew Barry and Stefanski in place, his voice doesn't have to be the only one, because the guys he liked can also chime in on what they believe, we should go forward doing.
I think we should go forward into winning a Super Bowl with this talented roster that we have. That's about all I got.
For it. It's all on whether or not this quarterback can come back and play some real football this year.
Yeah,
it's very hard to win one without a quarterback who can really ball out.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show for today. Show sponsored by the Doug White Insurance Agency. Give them a call for any of your insurance needs. 440-235-8500. They're located at 8020 Columbia Road in Olmsted Falls. Get down there, see Doug White and all the ladies that work there, and they'll take care of you. All your insurance needs. Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to kick Paul DePodesta to the curb so we can save money. No, I'm kidding. Damn mustache. Oh man, you have to have that every show now, especially while your beard is like thinned out. P. Barker, thank you for joining the show tonight as well, buddy. He said they were talking about 20 years for the future for the stadium. It's a purpose-built facility that can provide 365 days a year mainstream events. Sorry, it's just basic business. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants a football stadium that you can't do other things in. And when you're in Cleveland and the weather's, I mean, everybody talks about the winter, but come on, guys. We've all been there plenty of time to know it could be March 25th and it could have a blizzard or massive rainstorm. And it's just makes it very hard to plan more events there. It makes it hard for teams to want to bid to go to events there. Final Fours, concerts, whatever it might be. I don't know if we'd ever get a Super Bowl. I don't know if we have the infrastructure for that many visitors in Cleveland, but you're definitely not getting one without a dome. So
not only that, we talked to Charlie Hewlett last week. We had him on the show. You guys go back and watch that. Can you imagine what it's like for that guy to snap to a placeholder or a punter in freezing December weather?
Yeah. The reality is you don't want to have to design a football team that works in the cold, because as much as we want there to be home playoff games, you need a team that can. Most of the stadiums have gone to a dome. The Super Bowls are in domes or in warm weather cities. Like, it's better to be able to pick the best players for your team, regardless of where they play, than have to pigeonhole yourself to picking guys that work in the cold because they have to play in the cold in Cleveland. It's great if you're Pittsburgh and you ended up with Ben Roethlisberger, who is just a massive guy who's not affected as much by the snow. Josh Allen works in Buffalo. But the reality is, if you had your choice, you want to pick the best quarterback you can get, and you don't want to have to only pick them based on like a size. And that goes for all players. That's just one example. But like, you want to be able to pick a receiver you love and not have to worry about, he came from Florida State. Can he play in the cold?
Texas, another big one.
Yeah.
I'm going to use a Johnny Manziel gesture here. You know what a dome would bring in?
Yeah.
It's revenue.
It would cost us a fortune, but it would hopefully earn its way back to everybody in the end.
Yes. All right. With that being said, great show, Chad. Angel, you did a great job today. Thank you for
incredible takes. Always love having you with us, Angel.
Yes, always. But yeah, we will see you guys next
week. Best
week.
Wishes. Everybody send your prayers.
Yes. Do not forget that, please. A lot going on with Angel right now and his family. So just, send a couple prayers to his way, and God bless you, Angel. And everybody else. We'll see you guys next week.